Hello once again, it's Matthew here from Matthew North Music and I'm in the shed. And today we're going to be taking a look at a guitar, and it's this guitar in my hand. Now, from the headstock you might think there's not too much wrong with it, but when we lift it up and I show you the actual guitar itself, you can see that it's seen better days. Now, this is a guitar made in Japan in the early 70s and it was branded in the UK as Top 20. Now, I had a guitar, my first guitar in fact, was made by a company called Jedson, and it was effectively made in the same factory that made these guitars in Japan. And this guitar is particularly well known if you happen to be a fan of The Cure, because this was the guitar Robert Smith first used. He used it on all the early gigs, and it is rumoured that he used it for recording the first album, although I think in truth it was more likely the pickup on the bridge was used on the first album, which he had on his Fender Jazzmaster, which was the guitar that he got when the band got signed. Anyway, this guitar's in a heck of a state, so what we're going to do, we're going to take it apart and we're going to have a look at it and see if we can actually put it back together and have it as a musical instrument. Even though this guitar is in a complete state, it's still a good idea when working on any kind of instrument or anything delicate really, particularly if it's got wood on it, to stick it on like a piece of carpet, something like this, just because you're less likely to scratch it, less likely to cause any damage. Well, the first thing we look at here then is this scratch plate with all these various controls. I don't quite know what's going on here, but as you can see, these are the three original holes that would have had the 2 volume controls and a tone control. But then somebody's added these controls here, and they've drilled a hole there, and there are 2 switches here. Now, the 2 switches were basically on-off switches for the pickups, and you would have had your volume and tone here. But why they added these, I have no idea. But what we're going to do is I'm going to take the scratch plate off and then we're going to have a look and see what's behind it. This screw here then, it definitely needs to be drilled out, and my drill is pretty much a sledgehammer to crack a nut. So this could go horribly wrong, but we'll see. I'm actually using the weight of the drill to go in, I'm not putting any pressure on it. Now I'm applying a light pressure. Let's have a look. We got it out. Almost. A little bit more, I think. There we go. Let's see what lurks under this guitar. And we have an interesting collection. We have 3 pots that have been wired. There's the original capacitor for the tone control, which is kind of wired to one of these switches. With a lot of muck and gunk there. And we have some broken switches. I think the top part of that switch is here. So if we look at the switch, they just slide from top to bottom. And it wouldn't actually surprise me if I put that on there. And if I actually remake this switch, it would not surprise me if this switch will actually work. But anyway, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take everything off this scratch plate and clean it. We're then going to clean all the muck out of here. I'm also going to remove the hardware here, and I'm going to take the neck off, because as you can see, I think the neck's in a bit of a state and probably could do with a good clean. So stripping everything off, cleaning the scratch plate, and then we'll take it from there. Because everything is so rusted out here, I've just given it a squirt of WD-40 in the hope that it might loosen some of the rust and therefore make it easier to undo these screws, because I think at the moment it's going to be almost impossible to remove. This is our Top 20 all disassembled then. I used the old WD-40 on the socket, the jack socket, because that was almost welded to the scratch plate. Now, if you look at the scratch plate, it actually doesn't look too bad. It's filthy, but I think after it's had a clean, I think that'll be all right. It's not actually chipped or damaged in any way, which is good. The pickups themselves don't look too bad. I'm going to desolder them, and I'm going to give them a clean, and I'll use some metal polish. There's like a rubber thing on there. I don't know what that was doing on there, but anyway, I've taken that off now. And I did actually just write on the back bridge B and N for bridge and neck pickup, just in case there is any difference, although I think they're probably both exactly the same. But yeah, I'm going to desolder these, and I'm going to give it all a good clean, and then we'll have a look and see what's going to be the best plan of attack for putting it all back together. Both of our switches then I've actually taken apart. One was already in bits, which was this one, and there's our innards, which I've actually managed to clean, and here's our outer cover, and I think that will make a working switch. Now this switch here is actually physically broken, as you can see, but what I propose to do with this one is to super glue it back together, and hopefully I can then remake the other switch, so both switches should stay original to this guitar. Well then, bit of brasso, and the pickups actually, they've come out all right. They don't look too bad at all. They're moderately respectable. I mean, there's a bit of muck on there, but you know, it's 50 years old, so I'm quite happy with that. As for the scratch plate, well, the scratch plate's not looking too bad either. It's you know, it's reasonably clean, and you know, this will work. This should work. Now, as for our switches, I cleaned them in some soap and boiling hot water, and they're mostly clean. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to super glue this together. And the great thing with this Gorilla super glue is it's supposed to dry in 10 minutes, but we shall see. So we have to apply a little bit just on one of the surfaces, and that's going to be this side, I think. But you really don't want too much. In fact, I probably already put too much on. I will see. And I'll plonk that in place, and then we shall let it set. Now I think the 4 bolts to hold the pickups in are probably a bit too far gone, but I'm not 100% sure, so I've stuck them in a little bag, and I'm going to give them a spray with some ordinary WD-40, and I'm just going to let them soak for a little while, just to see, you know, whether there's any life left in them or not. If not, I've got a feeling they may well be the same diameter as the screws that you get with normal mains 13 amp sockets. They kind of feel like they're the same size, and being that this was a guitar on a budget, that kind of thing wouldn't surprise me, but I'm going to let these soak anyway. Well, as far as our switch goes then, this is the first one that I've managed to put together, and it seems okay. But the moment of truth is going to be our electrical test. So I'm going to clip the 1/2 of our multimeter to the middle position, and I'm going to then clip this to this end. Now that should be off. Now if I flick it across, it's on, off. Now if I move this to the other side, that's on and that's off. So that's correct. Let's have a look on the other side of the switch, and if we move it across, it's on. Move it back, it's off. And if this is on, brilliant. So we have remade the first of our 2 pickup selector switches. Now the screws for this are actually in the bag with the other screws for the pickups, which if we look at them now, there's a lot of rust that's come off these screws. So I kind of got a feeling that if I give it a wipe over, these screws will actually be okay for the guitar and for the switches as well, which is great because it's nice to keep things as original as possible, but we'll carry on letting that do its thing. This is our other switch here. Now unfortunately the capacitor that was used for the tone control has had some physical damage. There's a bit had fallen off, so I don't think we can reuse that cap, but that's not exactly going to be a great loss. But I'm going to disconnect all the wires. I'm then looking at our pots. Now they are old, but I think they might still work. And I'm actually looking at this one here, and if we go onto our multimeter, if I connect this leg here, it's gone there to pretty much nothing, and we turn it the other way very slowly. We're about halfway across now, we're at 100k. Move it down, it's 150k logarithmic linear pot, and that's working on that side of the pot. And if we go to the other side of the pot, that's saying 153k. It could be because there's actually other things soldered to this. I'm actually going to just disconnect the wires on this just to be 100% sure what we're dealing with. So we've now disconnected the wires, and I'm now hooking that on in the centre. Actually, we'll just get the measurement of the actual pot itself. The pot itself is 153k. So I'll just move that in the middle. It doesn't really matter which way it is. And if I turn this all the way to the end, it's 153k. And if I connect that, it should say 0 or near enough 0, yeah. And if I turn that the other way, it's 153k. So I think this pot is probably okay. So I'm going to give that a clean with some contact cleaner, and we're going to reuse that one. This pot here, I don't know what value this is. Let's put our meter across it. And it's 13k. And it's 13k whatever you do. Oh, that's because I'm turning that. So if I move this to the middle, it's showing nothing. And if I go the other way, it's 13.69k. And if I flip this over to the other side, that should be on almost short. We're at 10 ohms. Turn that all the way to the other side, and it's not quite there. So what I'm going to do is give it a clean with some contact cleaner. And then we're going to wind the pot a few times. And then we'll see what we get. So 13.6, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, down to pretty much nothing. And I'll flip this over to the other side. And yeah. So that potentiometer is working as well. Let's go to our last one then, which is this one here. And again, I'm just going to give this a clean with some contact cleaner. I didn't do the first one, but I will give that a clean anyway. Because I mean, these are pretty solid, nice pots. You know, it's got to be said. And if we hook this up onto the outer rings, just to understand what the value is, and that's a 10k potentiometer. So I'm guessing these two are probably meant to be the same. So that's 10k log, and that's saying 10 as well. So the other one's drifted in value somewhat, but you know, it's not terrible. And we'll hook this up in the middle, and we'll turn the pot, and it's going up to 10k, and it's logarithmical, so this is probably volume control. And we'll do the same on the other side. So it stays on 10 for ages, and then it goes to the other settings. So yeah, that is 10k. So these are our two volume controls. And this odd potentiometer here that isn't original, I don't think, is going to be our tone control. Right then, we've got our super glued selector switch now for the other pickup. Again, we've got a signal connection there. If I flick it across, it goes off. And we're getting nothing on the other side. Oh, we are now. Might be worth just sticking a tiny bit of dribble of contact cleaner in there actually, just to make sure the blades are okay. Yeah, that's better. And here we have a populated scratch plate. Now, this isn't wired up yet. As you can see, nothing's actually connected. But what we have is we have two pickups, we have two switches here and here, and we have our 3 potentiometers and a new jack socket. Now, I don't know if you can see it if I bring the camera up. You probably can't, but on the top here, somebody's actually scratched in the words "Far Out Man." So, you know, who knows what sort of music may have been made on this guitar when it was earlier in its life. But anyway, it's already looking so much better than it did. It's recognisable now as what it should be. I'm going to find some knobs in a minute that I'll put over these pots here. They're not going to be the same as what was on the original guitar, but they'll be okay. Now, if we look at the wiring, our wires here are actually quite short. They're not as long as they should be, so I'm going to need to kind of extend them a little bit, but that's not going to be too hard. And then I'm just going to wire them, and how I'm going to wire this is each pickup goes to its volume pot. The output of the volume pot will go to the switch, and then it will go from the switch to the jack, and then the tone control will sit across the jack. Something I've just noticed with these two pickups is that they are actually different, because the one here has got stranded wire coming out of the cable, whereas this one it's like a wrapped around wire with some sort of like it's almost like a sort of papery sort of material wrapping around it. And I would suspect this pickup is older than this pickup, because this is the sort of wire that you would have had in the 60s. And then as the 70s dawned, wire was more like this. So it's just a little interesting detail. An hour and a half or so has passed, and here we have now the fully wired scratch plate. If you're wondering what this wire is here, that's just an earth wire that will go to the bridge of the guitar. But we have our tone control here, which I haven't yet put the capacitor on. But it is wired, and the two pickups go to their volume controls, then out the volume controls to the switch, and then the output of the switch goes to the tone control, and then that goes to the jack. And the question I suppose you're going to ask is, does the pickups actually work? Well, what we're going to do is a very, very not scientific test. I've got my little amplifier here, which if I just open here, and then I'm just going to grab myself a jack-to-jack cable, which I have hung up here, and we'll plug this into the amp and switch it on. And so we've got some signal there. And then if I just turn the volume controls up and just tap on the pickup, that's working, and that's working. If I turn it off, that's not working, and that is working. If I turn them both off, they're both not working. So just check its volume control. Yeah, that seems to work. And the volume control for this one. Yeah, that's working. So we have got a working scratch plate. All I need is a little capacitor to go in here, like a 220 nanofarad or something like that, and we're good to go. Well then, the main problem we have now with this guitar is this. All of the bridge and the tailpiece are absolutely rusted on with these screws, and it's very difficult to even try to move any of them. And I got a feeling if I did try, I'd probably round them off and damage it. Now, the one plus side is that the bridge actually seems to be okay. And the tailpiece is probably going to be okay as well. As for the headstock, well, I've managed to get the retainers in place okay, and all of the tuning pegs seem to be going around okay. But the neck is a bit bent and it's a bit of a funny angle. Now, whether the funny angle is because that's how it's meant to be or not, I don't know. But I've got a little addition, and it's this. I bought this third-party set the other day. I actually bought it from someone in the UK because I didn't really want to wait for it to turn up from China. So I actually had to pay £15 for this. And it's a tailpiece and a bridge for one of these cheapo Japanese guitars. But what I might do, for now anyway, is just pop on this bridge part here. I mean, it's really cheap and nasty and horrible, but I'm hoping that if this fits here, which it just about does. Yeah, I think it will just about go on if I give it a push. Yeah, it will. So this bridge then may work, and we may have a guitar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop in the electronics, hold it in with just a couple of screws because we don't have enough screws to replace it anyway, and I'll stick some strings on and we'll see if we get a sound out of it. Yeah, it works. The Robert Smith Top 20 guitar works. As it turned out, by putting strings on, it actually put some tension on the neck and pulled the neck slightly forward. And I've got to say, it doesn't feel all that bad. I've literally done no setup at all. I've got the bridge up fairly high, but we've got no real buzz on the guitar, and it's sounding not too bad. Now that's the neck pickup. I'm going to go to the bridge pickup. But when you get the two, blend the two together, it's a great little guitar, and I can really see why Robert Smith liked this guitar. And certainly, you know, if you want to play those old sort of cure tones, sort of, something like that. I mean, it's got that sound. That there's no doubt that this pickup that Robert moved into his Jazzmaster is part of that clean tone sound that the Cure had in the early days. And you know, it's transferred to this guitar really well. In the end, what I did, I put on 3 knobs that you may recognise. They're the same type of knobs that I use on the Look Mum No Computer type pedals for the modular synth. But I think it kind of fits this guitar really well. And now, I will say I have got a compressor switched on at the moment, purely because I know the pickups are slightly different volume levels, because this one's quite low down and I literally can't be bothered to adjust it at the moment. In fact, maybe actually, I actually do have a screwdriver here, so I will actually just raise the the level of the pickup a little bit in height wise. Now you can hear it, you know, these pickups are quite microphonic, but you know, that's because they're old. You know, this guitar's really old, and it was actually made on a budget. So that's our bridge pickup. It's got slightly out of tune. And this is our neck pickup. You obviously make allowances for the fact this guitar's out of tune, because these things do go out of tune. You know, you just look at it and it goes out of tune. But that being said, would I use this guitar live? Absolutely not. It would be too unreliable. Would I use it for recording? Yeah, I think I would, because it's kind of got a sound, and it's not a Telecaster, it's not a Stratocaster, and it's nothing conventional. And that's the thing I've always admired about Robert Smith, is the fact he's never really played conventional guitars. He's always played, you know, he was playing Jazzmasters when nobody else was. He then moved on to things like, he played Gretsch's for a while. He played this really weird thing. It looked a bit like a Vox with loads of buttons on it. And, you know, that's why he's got a unique guitar sound. And this thing is wonderful. And yeah, I'm going to have a lot of fun with this guitar. And it's an absolute testament to the fact that, you know, these guitars were, in the late 60s and early 70s, these were the absolutely cheapest guitars you could possibly buy. Now, if we look close up here, you can see there's a bit of wire that's just coming out of the bridge here. And that's because the wire hole was going to the bottom of this bridge. But the problem was I couldn't get it off the guitar because it had these rusty screws. And I know if I turned the screws around, it would have just, you know, gone pop, and it would have been hopeless. I mean, yeah, we've got a few holes here, but, you know, they're battle scars. But, you know, I am really pleased with this. And the actual neck itself is actually pretty straight. I mean, it was bending back a bit, but, you know, you look down the end of it and, you know, it's got a little kink, but, you know, I'm not going to fiddle with it because, you know, you can go right to the 12th fret with, and there's no problem with the intonation. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video anyway, and you know, if you do see one of these literally being almost chucked out, I mean, this may as well have been chucked out, you know, you probably will find these at car boot sales for 15 quid. You probably will find these in junk shops, and you'll probably find them on places like Facebook Marketplace for not a lot of money. Now, there are people trying to sell these things on eBay, and they are asking stupid money. They're asking like 250 quid. These aren't worth 250 quid. They're not worth, you know, 150 quid really. You know, they are what they are. But they could be an awful lot of fun, and certainly as a recording guitar, certainly something to have. Now, I was thinking, do I take this pickup off and stick it on my Jazzmaster that I built so I could have a Robert Smith style guitar? But I'm not going to do that. But if I pick one of these pickups separately, then I might do. But, you know, on this guitar, they sound great, you know, and this is, you know, this is In a way, this is an iconic guitar because so many people had these. I put a photo of this on my Facebook page a little while ago, and loads of people said, oh, I remember that, and everyone's got a story about these guitars. So anyway, top 20. Is this top 20 in my guitar collection? Well, yeah, of course it is. Hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.